You know, the President-elect Donald Trump has been pushing forward with these plans for thousands of what he describes as new jobs coming here, in many cases from over there, and it does appear as if companies are jumping on board. Watch.
We have a combination of Sprint for 5,000 jobs, and that's coming from all over the world, and they're coming back into the United States, which is a nice change. And also OneWeb, 3,000 jobs. That's a new company. And it was done through Massa, and a terrific guy, and we appreciate it.
We are going to get right to it this hour. You heard mention of the company OneWeb. The founder and executive chairman of that company is Greg Wyler, and there is Mr. Wyler. He joins us now. Good to see you, sir. Thank you very much for coming on with us. Now, we look at what Mr. Trump had to say yesterday, and basically to set it up, your company is adding, we're told, 3,000 jobs here in the United States. There's a man who we've become familiar with now named Masayoshi Son, who's the head of a firm in Japan called SoftBank, who has this agreement with the incoming president to, create 50,000 jobs here in the United States. A lot of that through Sprint, and he controls that company. But he's also made an investment in your company of over $1 billion. So that's the setup. Can you tell us, though, timeline-wise, how all of this came about over the last few weeks and/or months?
Sure. Well, it's all been pretty fun. So, as you may know, OneWeb, we're building it's going to be the world's largest constellation of satellites. We're really aiming to eventually bridge the digital divide by 2027. But before then, to bring very high-speed broadband and make it available to everybody around the world, including, of course, everyone in America. That over 50% of Americans have limited access to broadband. So, Massa had met with we had met with Massa about an investment. We raised $500 million last year, and we were raising money this year again. And in those discussions, he became excited about the mission and what we're trying to accomplish globally. And then when he met with President-elect Donald Trump, he talked about this 50,000 jobs and $50 billion.
Right, so the timeline of all that was you were meeting with him before he met with the President-elect, or vice versa? Or?
Yeah, so we were meeting with him before he met with President-elect. Then he meets with the President-elect, and he had talked about a number that he was going to invest. And then after he met with President-elect, he boosted that number to $1 billion. And there's a lot of excitement, of course. And then we looked based upon his promise, we looked at the jobs we were creating and talking with all of our suppliers and our whole base, and over the next 4 to 5 years. And that's where we ended up today.
So you have a larger investment after this gentleman's meeting with the President-elect. What was the conversation before that? How much money were you talking about? And now you have, as you say, over $1 billion.
Well, we haven't released the amount that was decided before that, but suffice to say he wanted to bring it up to $1 billion. His portion is $1 billion. Then we have a little over $200 million from our current investors, which includes Qualcomm, for instance, and Coca-Cola.
So why did he do that? Do you know, in your conversations with him, was it something directly related to the policies that we expect to be put in place by the Trump administration? Why increase his investment in your company?
Well, I think, first of all, he was very excited about what we can accomplish for the world, and he became excited about meeting his promise and his goals that he had discussed with the president. So I think in combination of the policies the President-elect has discussed putting in place, the tax policies and the like, have been exciting for Massa and a number of other businesses. So that's just led to higher and higher investment in the U.S.
Right, and more jobs, 3,000 jobs, as you've announced now, coming here to the United States. Would we be having this conversation, by the way, had Hillary Clinton won?
I don't know. I can't say that.
So,
but
it's possible, in other words. Some of this was in, and you know what some people say, oh, Mr. Trump's just taking credit for something that was already in the works. But it seems like you're saying that there wouldn't be as much in the works had it not been for his conversation with Masayoshi-san.
I'm fairly certain there wouldn't be as much in the works without Donald Trump, without President-elect Trump. He's fanning the flames. He's trying to help grow. He's not going to build the companies himself, but what he wants to do is inspire and create people to, get people motivated to invest and build the jobs, and it seems to be happening.
Yeah, and he, Sprint, and that's another story altogether. And now with your company, and we haven't really talked about the details of what you do, but you described it a little bit earlier in the interview, and it does strike me as, well, this is a company that wants to do things all over the world, and you want to make it easier, essentially, for people to have internet in places where it's difficult for them to get internet, right? So that wouldn't necessarily be a company that pops to mind to say, well, they need to have workers here in the United States. You could have workers anywhere, right?
Well, we could have workers anywhere, and we do have workers all over the world, and we evaluate many different countries for where we're going to be deploying assets and resources. But our mission is to provide internet access, of course, to the U.S. population, but globally, there are about half the world without internet.
Right.
So you really have half the world which can't benefit from all the internet, the cool internet things we are doing in the U.S., and all the internet companies have half the world isn't part of the market.
Right, so this is interesting. So you have 3,000 people, right, and some of them are going to be engineers, from what I understand. You could describe further what these other workers are, but you have 3,000 people. They're all going to be here, right, in the United States. Couldn't you find similar talent elsewhere and do so for cheaper, even with the new policies that you expect to be put in place here, taxes, regulations, and everything else? Wouldn't it be cheaper to do that overseas? No?
Maybe, maybe not. Some of the technology base that we have in America is really outstanding. And I think the push to continue to build the space technologies that we have in the U.S. is really important on the aerospace side. So we have a pretty deep technology base and capability that just needs to be unlocked.
Okay, but if you didn't do it here, if you didn't hire the 3,000 here, would Masayoshi-san, the Japanese investor, have given you the money, the $1 billion plus?
The investment would have come in, even some investment. I don't know the total. The total amount might not have been $1 billion, but it would have come in. I think that, as I said, the $1 billion really came about bringing it up to that number to make it a big round $1 billion based upon its $50 billion commitment. There is a lot of excitement for what we're doing, and the market size that we're dealing, it's really kind of an infinite market, right? You have almost 4 billion people without internet access, plus all the aircraft and enterprises, businesses around the world and ships that are really desperate for internet.
Right, and this is a business, at least from what I understand, from what I've read and the little I know about Masa, that he's interested in, that he wanted to, that, as you say, he may have invested in anyway. But it sounds like what you're saying is that at the end of the day, he came to you and said, well, all right, we're definitely interested in your business, Greg, but we'll give you even more money if you have people here working in the United States. Is that fair?
Well, it wasn't a quid pro quo on if the people are working in the U.S., but we did explain that we would have people working in the U.S. It was naturally going to happen, some portion of them, and now there's an even greater drive towards creating the jobs in the U.S. based upon the excitement and all the press around the number. So we're growing, and we're growing quite fast, and we're going to definitely be creating a lot more jobs in the U.S. because of it.
So you'll have more jobs.
Our background.
Go ahead. No, finish that thought. I'm sorry.
Yep. So our background is we had our first round last year about $500 million.
Right.
And then this year we raised just now $1.2 billion. So we've got a little over $1.7 billion of funding to date. Our project is going to, our initial first generation of satellites will cost about $3.5 billion. So we have all the equity we need, and we have debt on the other side of that. And we'll provide over 10 terabits per second of global capacity. So it's great for the U.S. to be building and designing this system, which will have an incredible social, human impact on a global basis.
With people having more access to the internet. So finally, just to wrap all of this up, tell us, how will the environment, in your view, be different under a President Trump for businesses than it has been for the past 4 to 8, even longer years?
Well, I think the fundamental change that I just hear repeatedly is the change to the tax structure. That allowing U.S. businesses to have a more competitive and fair environment for their tax policy. And I just hear that time and time again. It just seems simpler and clearer. So that's an exciting thing to watch for. It's not done yet, but
right. Well,
it's exciting to watch.
Right, it isn't done yet, but that is the promise. Greg Wyler, good luck with everything, and thank you very much for explaining it to us all today. We appreciate it.